This is a fan-generated show. If you would like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com and also don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Good evening. Welcome to the Jamie Glazov Moment. Tonight, the Pope scolds Christians. Ladies and gentlemen, in his recent Good Friday prayer, Pope Francis found it the occasion to scold the world's Christians throughout the world for their conduct and for bringing so much violence and injustice into the world. Among other things, he was saying that Christians are leaving future generations to a world, quote unquote, fractured by divisions and wars. Ladies and gentlemen, Hugh Fitzgerald, a great writer for Jihad Watch, has written an article on this. Hugh Fitzgerald, Pope Francis chastises the world's Christians. Go to Jihad Watch and read his article on this. So I credit him for inspiring also my decision to do a moment on this today, and a lot of really great facts in Jihad Watch that he writes about in terms of this. But so I chose my moment for tonight just to focus in on this, because this Pope is always saying these very, very interesting things, and I'm not sure that interesting is the right word. Pope Francis, you find this occasion to chastise and scold the world's Christians. I'm just wondering, day after day, month after month, year after year, what is happening in terms of the world when we look in terms of terrorism? Jihadist attacks constantly, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people being victimized by jihad, by Sharia, jihadists blowing themselves up amongst men, women, and children. Muslims also suffering very much at the hands of jihad and Sharia. Christians being persecuted by jihad and Sharia. Also, of course, Jews and Buddhists and all non-Muslims. Pope Francis, you find the time to single out Christians who are being persecuted throughout the world at the hands of jihad and Sharia, but you don't say anything about Islam. Nothing about jihad. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, this leader of the Catholic Church is a consistent defender of Islam. For instance, he's constantly making statements welcoming and excusing the mass invasion that has occurred in Europe in terms of Muslim migrants pouring into Europe, which we know has resulted in mass rape, mass violence. And not only is he silent about it, but he's enabling this hijra, jihad by immigration. Just look at what's happening in Sweden, what's happening in the United Kingdom, what's happening in France in terms of Muslim rape gangs, in terms of no-go zones, etc., etc., etc. In terms of jihad and what's happening to Christians throughout the Middle East, throughout the world, the Pope is silent, but he's chastising Christians. A few very interesting quotes by Pope Francis over the years. Hugh Fitzgerald wrote about a few of them, singled out a few of them that I'd like to repeat here. The Pope has said, quote unquote, that Islam is a religion of peace, one which is compatible with respect for human rights and peaceful coexistence. He's also said there's no such thing as Islamic terrorism. He's also quoted as saying that authentic Islam and the proper reading of the Quran are opposed to every form of violence. Pope Francis, have you read the Quran recently? You know, do we need to talk about Surah 9:5, Surah 9:29, 47:4? Do you listen to ISIS when they refer to all those Quranic texts when they sanction what they do? Do I need to bring Bill Warner here, the scholar, to educate you about how more than 50% of Islamic texts, of Quranic texts, deal more with hatred of the unbelievers than even dealing with the believers? Because the Quran is dealing with the need to subjugate and to conquer non-Muslims, and all the references of how dirty they are and how unequal they are and how bad they are and how they need to have jihad waged upon them and how they need to be made second-class citizens. It's what Bill Warner has said is the K word in Islam. They're the kafirs. So, Pope Francis, why would you say such a thing? I was raised a Catholic. I'm a Christian. very interested in who this Pope is, gradually becoming more and more concerned, perhaps frightened. Maybe frightened is not necessarily the right word, because we know that we have protection from Jesus Christ, and we know in the end where the victory will come from. But, we're alerted as to who certain people are and what certain forces are. And so I wanted to kind of end with this. I was thinking about this on my way to the studio this evening. Pope Francis, we get it, that Christians, that the shepherd sometimes has to chastise or scold his flock or his children. You're the head of the Catholic Church, sometimes you need to crack down and say, hey, get with it. And, I get all that. As Christians, we're in a perpetual habit and reflection on asking for mercy and knowing that we're sinners and celebrating and being grateful for Christ's sacrifice on the cross as a redemption and as our salvation, and how grateful we are at Christ's blood and how it washes away our sins, and we're constantly reflecting on our sinful nature and asking for mercy, asking for forgiveness, trying to be better people. I get all that. And perhaps we need a scolding from time to time from our leaders, perhaps. But I'm just wondering, Pope Francis, when you scold, let's say, certain Christians for the things that you have, okay, but let me ask you this. If those Christians, because of their Christianity and because of their faith in Jesus Christ, were kidnapped and tortured and murdered by jihadists for their faith, would you also take the time to mention their names, to be honest about why they were killed, why they were tortured, and to be honest, would you be honest about the ideology that inspired and sanctioned them? I don't think so, because you haven't really been doing that. So you chastise Christians, but you don't speak on behalf of the Christians that are butchered and tortured and killed by jihad and Sharia every day. So you scold Christians, but you don't stand up for them when they are persecuted. And you don't label their persecutors, and you are not honest about what motivates and sanctions their persecutors. What does that say about you? And what forces and what interests do you really serve in that capacity? I'll see you on the next Jamie Glazov moment. Good night.